I will call this meeting to order at 5:31 p.m. First order of business is the approval of the agenda, the compliance of the governor's executive order 21-10 dated February 3rd, 2021. Whether there's public access to the meeting or not, it looks like we have. People actually. And she's gone. All right. So I guess, do we need to vote on that? No, doesn't say we vote on it. Or do we? Yeah, I guess we'll vote on it. Just so we have the approval of the agenda, if I can get a motion.
Motion.
From which Carrie?
Carrie Feather.
Carrie Feather.
Sorry, my internet is really weird tonight. Feather.
Do you have Cox or Verizon?
Verizon, but it's really crazy tonight. It's why it took me forever to get on.
Oh, wow. All right. Second by Carrie Smith, of course.
Yes.
And all in favor?
Aye.
3-0. Next up is the approval of minutes from January 12, 2021. I'm assuming that you ladies saw them.
Yes.
Excellent. And I just need a motion for that.
I'll motion to approve the minutes.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. And Ms. Feather.
Feather will second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
First order of business. Tell you what, I'm gonna, unless there's objection, I'm just gonna jump to immunization because that should be the easy one. We have not changed that policy at all from the last time we looked at it. So unless you guys have any questions about it, I would just ask for a vote to approve it.
Actually, I have questions, Mark. I apologize if we're going, I have questions on both of them. So
Yeah, no, not a problem. Let's start with immunization first though, okay?
Okay, great. And now I have to dual screen it from all my notes. So
I know I have the same thing. I've got to put my notes up there on the monitor.
It's horrible when you need to see glasses for far away, but not close up, and it's the opposite problem, right?
That's why I have half glasses now.
Yeah.
Oh, that's smart.
Yeah. Just in looking at the policy J10, and I'm going to just, if I could, just ask the few questions. I don't know if you want to do them one at a time.
Do them one at a time, and I'm sure Rachel can explain them, whatever. Yes,
Okay.
Right. You wrote the policy, so.
On page 1, under the minimal standards for immunization, it does talk about our alignment with multiple different academies, which are more federally done, but it doesn't state anything concerning Rhode Island state law. And I'm just wondering, because isn't that where we have that HPV or HPC vaccination, or that is causing a lot of discrepancies? It does not align with federal mandate in that respect. So I'm wondering if something should be added on that.
This entire policy comes from the state regarding the rules and regulations pertaining, it's right at the very top. So this is the state document, and those agencies are talked about in the state document. So I don't know if that answers your question. I just lifted it. Actually, I didn't have to look, that was already in the policy. I just kept it, but it aligns directly with the policies in the rules and regulations for Rhode Island.
So maybe this is a question for Katie then too. Should it be reclarified there as it in that first minimum standards for immunization? Should it be clarified there again that it's aligned in addition or first and foremost to the Rhode Island laws?
Well, but the federal agencies don't have any HPV guidance. I thought they did.
Okay, my understanding was that Rhode Island was the only one that mandated it.
Right, but the federal agencies did provide guidance that recommended it. Yeah.
Right. So we're fine with that. That's my only concern, that looking at it, that people are going to think, well, if they're only recommending, then I don't have to ask for an exemption for that, versus exemptions for other types of immunizations where it is more
Well, the
aligned.
federal government recommends all of it, and the state governments pass the laws requiring things. That's a local control issue.
Okay.
So no matter what the vaccine it is that's being recommended by the federal guidance, it is up to the state to pass the legislature to require.
Okay. All right. That answers the question then. I just wanted to make sure legally we weren't going to have any problems. So thank you for that. Also in this same, on page 1, the immunization records in number 1, we need, I think, to describe designee in here because it does talk about a designee. And I believe that it's mentioned again later, but maybe refers to designee in a different respect.
So I believe the intent of designee, again, this is directly from the rules and regulations, is when one of the nurses in the office sends out the record and gives you a copy of the record, healthcare record. That's what I think it is.
Okay,
Okay.
you got on.
I think they're just trying to clarify that the parent can't sign saying that they've had the immunizations, that it has to be someone
Right.
from the medical community or someone who's been designated by the medical community, the physician, nurse practitioner, to do that particular job.
Okay, yeah, and that's where the confusion was. I just wanted to make sure, and Mark, this is on page 1.
At the
under
bottom.
Yeah,
number.
immunization record number 1 under
Ah.
that section. So it's just because later on page 3, we talk about a designee again, but it doesn't appear to have the same type of meaning as it did here. So I'm just wondering if we should clarify that any further in the wording. I wouldn't want someone to think designee is a foster parent or somebody in the foster system that's managing, or a DCYF in this situation that we're talking about in this subset
Right.
1. Designee is only in the medical field.
So you're looking at on page 3, under waiting periods in school enrollment number 1.
Yes.
Okay, I think, but when we're adding that as a list, it's giving a list of people and or the designee. So it's essentially, it's a continuation of the folks that are at the beginning of that. So the first one under immunization records, physician, registered nurse practitioner, physician assistant, or his or her designee. On the one below, where designee is not a role unto itself. It's part of that particular list. When we're looking at waiting periods, it says responsibility administrative head of the school or is his or her designee. So that'd be someone like if they designated a vice principal to do that position.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And that's why I was just concerned, because we're using it in 2 different places and it appears to be 2 different meanings. And I'm just not
Right.
sure if we should not use that word, or we should describe it better than just other than parents in the first one. And in here, it would seem, yeah, I would think, okay, they could designate it to an assistant principal or a counselor or whomever it may be in the administration, but it just wanted to know if we should clarify that. And
So
perhaps
I think, are you
it's-
interpreting it as designee has like a definition unto itself? So we're calling it designee here and designee here, but designee is related to what's ahead of it, what's in the sentence prior. I mean, if we want to clarify, we can, but I would like to hear what the language would be then.
Yeah, and I'm not sure what the language would be. I just looked at it and said, we're using the term designee
Mhm.
and it has different meanings and we didn't
Right.
define it in here. And the same question, by the way, I do have that same question, I believe, when we come into the J3 policy. It's
Mhm.
just in the descriptive so that there's no confusion on, who that designee may be. And I don't know if that's just with adding an EG.
Well, I
And
think the
they were not.
danger in putting down all the roles is that then you get a very narrow scope. So what, for instance,
Right.
in the case of the one on page 3, it could be the designee, it's ultimately the head of school's responsibility, the principal, right? But
Right.
they may have signed that role to the nurse, or they may have
Right.
assigned that role to the assistant principal, or I don't know, a dean or a lead teacher. I think if you start giving examples, then it becomes, you start to narrow your ability to designate to the appropriate person. And then you're saying only these folks, I don't know if I'm explaining that
So
well.
in general, when we're talking about can I speak? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So in general, in
My meeting,
policies,
lady.
Sorry, Mark.
in general, in policies, when you talk about or his or her designee, it's to provide flexibility, and the assignment has to be is explicit, meaning meaning Mr. Mitchell designates me to approve sick days. It's his responsibility, but I am designated to do it. And so, that's a clear, defined role in my part. It's not defined in any policy anywhere that I am in fact, designee on that. So if we define things too specifically, then it takes away any flexibility that we have, because if the principal and the nurse are out one day, then there's no designee. And so, that is the point in general in all policies, is to provide a little bit of flexibility for the person in charge, because one person can't do everything.
Right. And in this part on page 3, in that subsection 1, I feel comfortable with it there, that it's the administration head of the school or his or her designee. It completely shows that it's the designee of that specific role or roles. But up above in the other one, I'm not sure, besides it saying not a parent, I'm not sure if it described it in the same respect, or it allocated it, I would say.
If we're still talking about the number one,
Mhm.
I think it's clear that it's still medical professional.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, Mrs. Feather, did you have a question?
Yeah, I was my understanding of the word designee is that it refers back to whatever precipitates it. So it's a modifier, right? So it's saying that, okay, administrative head or designee, and we're just trying to not be exclusionary with that, because we don't want to just start as to Katie's point, we don't want to list a few people and then those people are out. And regarding designee in the other sense, again, I think it's referring back to the physician one. So I think it's clear.
I think what alerted you to it, Mrs. Smith, is the fact that in parentheses it says the signature of the student's parents is not acceptable. But I think the reason why they did that was because I think parents were trying to submit it and just sign like they had to, like in the old days, you had one of those, your own little health record that you'd write in and sign in. They're trying to delineate that's not the way it needs to be. It needs to be one of those printed ones that they now do out of the physician's office.
Okay. So
I think that's why they clarified it that way.
Right. And I think that's where the confusion is. You're absolutely correct. And I want to make sure that in lay terms and for people outside of this that are looking at it, that they understand the same. So is it possible then to put a period after the his, her designee, and then make that other one not in parentheses, but an actual sentence? The signature of the student's parents is not acceptable.
Whatever the pleasure of the group is, it's fine with me.
Hang on. Let me go back to, I just lost it. How did I lose that?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, here we go.
It's just the thought of reading it from the outside scope and making sure that it's clear enough that there's no questions for many parents. And I know this is being nitpicky, so I apologize. I just want to
No,
make
that's
sure
right.
we're explaining it well.
If is that what people want, I'll make the shift right now.
I'm okay with the way it is. I read it to mean the physician. So.
And I'm fine with that too. It's just the signature of the student's parents is not acceptable. That's the only part I was looking at, Mark, because it seems
I
to
guess she's
muddy it
proposing
the way
getting
it's in
rid
there.
of the parentheses and making it a full sentence.
Right.
Yeah, that's fine. We can do that.
Okay, I'll fix it right now. I might look funny because I'm looking at another screen.
We're in a Zoom meeting.
Doing it here too, so it's okay.
Yeah. Okay.
All
So
right.
do you have any other questions?
I have no other questions. Thank you.
Then I would ask for a motion to approve the amended, to approve the amendment.
I motion to approve the amendment.
Okay.
I'll second.
Switching between screens here. And if I don't do my notes correctly, then.
Mark, I just reshared it with you so you know that it's updated.
Okay. Okay, and so all in favor of the amendment, please vote.
Aye.
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 So that's 3-0, and then a motion to approve the amended.
Motion to approve the amended version.
And I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. So let's go back to Mrs. Parker. Hold on. Or Ms. Parker, I'm sorry. So let's jump back up to the teen dating violence, J3. This originally came up back in this November, December, because
Last year.
town was doing domestic awareness or domestic violence awareness, I should say. And then we looked at the policy, of course, and realized it needed some changes. So I will let Dr. Santa take this also.
So it also was a result of some concern regarding students who were reporting some incidents, and then a member of the staff calling the police, and then the police coming into the actual school to interview the child, and not necessarily following through with making sure the parents were aware that they were coming in. It was a little bit of a kerfuffle up at the high school, and we really didn't feel that the right procedure was followed. And then when we read the policy, we realized that maybe we need to amend it. So I actually did not amend this. I actually brought this to the mental health team, and they reviewed and went through and amended the policy to make sure that it had some protections. And one of the big one is regarding the police, but also making sure that when they're interviewing a child, that they have the ability to have a mental health support. Because what also occurred was the police started talking and administration talking to a student regarding the situation with no mental health people involved, and the student was involved with mental health. So it's just ensuring that we're protecting the child as well as protecting their rights to report who they want to report it to, as well as outlining what our responsibility is regarding DCYF. Because keeping in mind, reporting to DCYF is not the same as reporting to the police.
Now, I just have one.
Lisa, I don't know if you want to ask Lisa if she has anything more to add to that too. She was involved in all these conversations.
Yeah, I just have a quick question. If the assault actually took place on school property,
That's different.
I'm assuming that changes because that would not apply to this policy so much.
Yeah, most of the time it was, these were cases that occurred significantly outside of school, maybe even over the summer.
Yeah.
But they were being revealed and then sort of, I don't want to say mishandled because it's not the right word, but they just weren't.
It could have been handled better.
They could have been handled better, and our policy didn't support making sure that we're protecting the child. And I think that was one of our biggest concerns. And I remember having multiple conversations last fall with mental health support, pre-COVID fall, sorry.
Right. Ms. Parker, do you have anything to add?
Rachel, you did a great job with that. I think that you just brought up a good point about if it happens on school grounds, and I don't want to lose track of the students' rights, the victims' rights remain the same regardless. Like how you handle the perpetrator is a different story, but the victims' rights remain the same, and that is it's up to the victim and their parents to decide whether they're going to press charges or not. And that's a really important, I think that's a really important thing to keep in mind. And the second thing to keep in mind is that a victim has been victimized. It's a traumatic event. And so we have to treat it as a traumatic event. And that's why, looping in mental health people for any part of any kind of questioning or investigation, even if it's just to find out whether the school district needs to take any action or not, needs to happen with mental health.
Yeah.
And
just
it's to prevent, Mark, I mean, we had a case where, and I'm not going to reveal details, but essentially the case was they were starting to interview the child with no one there that knew that kid well. And it just felt we were almost re-traumatizing that child. And we were trying to prevent that,
Right. And I think this is going to bring up, because I know Dr. Masterson brought up needing to review the bullying policy as well. And I think that there's some overlap between the bullying policy, this policy, and there's another policy somewhere. And I think all of these are going to get reviewed, and we're going to do it through the administration, through mental health supports, and all of it. So this is going to be just one part of a larger discussion, I think. Any questions from the committee? Actually, Ms. Smith, you had some questions, I believe, right?
I did, and I just deleted the note, and I don't know how to take out a trash. So I'm going to go by, I'm going to go by memory here and hope that I'm okay. When we were into the new additions and under responsibility of administration, which I believe is page 5, I'm just wondering if we can take the, again, along with a mental health professional out of parentheses. Because
Yeah.
it seems to me that we're stating we need to
Really
have
need
that.
that, yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to make sure that we could just take that out.
What are people's thinking on that? I would agree with that, but
Where is it?
it's a pleasure.
Page-
It's on, under responsibility of administrators on
Page 5.
page.
No, I see it.
You see it? It's in red.
Oh, you know what? My stupid printer didn't print. I have my printer set up to print only black and white, and I must have forgotten to add color for the draft.
Well,
Yeah,
Mark, I'll
that
help you
change is
out.
fine with me. I mean, and
It starts at the end of line 5 under responsibility of administrators and continues to line 6, Mark.
So instead of the parentheses, taking rid of the parentheses and saying it's flat out. I agree with you.
Oh, lawfully no.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's good. It's a good point, Carrie. It's because you're right. It does the opposite of what we meant before, where it is exclusionary. So
So I can take that out.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, it was a good point. Thank you.
Anything else?
Just 2 other quick questions. The first is that we do mention bus stops in the earlier part, and I'm going to have to go back. It may be on page 1 or 2. I believe it could be page 4 for all I remember now. It's in the trash. But we mentioned bus stops,
Yeah.
and I'm wondering, should we be including anything that relates to their travel to the school? And the reason I say that is it's not just bus stops. What about if they're in the parking lot or, and they're walking into the school, or if they're walkers coming through a neighborhood? I mean, are we including those as well? So that was just one
No,
thought.
because school property generally consists of anything that's being used for the school. Anything of a
Oh,
public
I'm
street-
sorry, Mike.
Any public street is not usually included into school property conversations.
And then
Unless,
Mark,
right, that's-
Mark, under definitions at school, it's defined as in a classroom, on or immediately adjacent to school premises, on
Yeah.
a school bus or other school-related vehicle, an official school bus stop, or any school-sponsored activity event, whether or not it is on school grounds.
Oh, okay.
So it is defined there to mean adjacent also. So I
Okay.
think that would cover the concern about a parking lot or, the playground,
Right,
somewhere
but
other
we're
else.
talking about
adjacent.
walking to school. Some kids, I mean, technically we have 2-mile walking distances.
Right.
Right. And that
can't
was my
control the town.
concern
Yeah.
is, we can't really do it. We do say official bus stop, but the official bus stops are designed by Durham. So I just wanted to make sure that I understood it all. Thank you.
Yeah, they're designated by Durham just for logistical reasons, but we
Right.
actually approve them. So
Okay. All right. And then the only other question I have is that when we're talking about staff, is that inclusive of bus drivers and monitors? Or is that separate to Durham? In the monitors, I think the monitors are hired by us, but Durham is under their
yeah.
own hiring. So are they obligated as well at all times? And do we include them in our procedure?
Yeah, Durham is, their contract says that they are subject to all of our school policies.
Policies.
Okay, so they are treated as staff. Okay.
The
perfect.
the monitors are staff, and the school bus, they receive training regarding, especially after the DCYF changes that happened in the last few years. they've received training on that as well.
Okay, great. And then I had one other that I think that we said may need to report versus obligated to report. There was only one other part in here. And I don't remember where that may was versus the obligated. So I'm going to be
I'll have to
quiet.
go back and look, yeah.
Yeah, and look quickly. I do know that it was somewhere in the beginning part. So pages 1 and 4, I think were my biggest, so it might be in there. So I'll look quickly and see if I can.
Yeah,
find
yeah,
it.
give a quick look because that should probably.
Sorry.
No, I'm
Probably
sorry.
be a shall, right?
No, it wouldn't be in definitions.
I actually thought maybe it was in definitions, but it could be right after definitions, so I apologize.
Well, we can take a minute. Ms. St. Jean, do you have anything to add or questions or Dr. Masterson? Oh, Mrs. Feather.
Oh, sorry. We'll let Dr. Masterson go and then I'll ask my questions.
I just wanted to add, with the bullying harassment policy, I do believe in the definitions that the route to school is in there. And that is because they have a reasonable expectation of safety to come to school, not to just get to a bus stop or to get to the destination. So I just wanted to add that. I can review it. I mean, I'm reviewing it anyway, and I was going to talk about it later after
Yeah.
you deal with this, but just wanted to
Thank
add
you.
that last piece.
Thank you.
And-
That really helps.
Yeah, and I believe that once the bullying policy gets redone or amended, there's probably going to be some kind of an effect on other policies because a lot of these policies interlink in different places. So we may have to clean up some language at some point. Unfortunately, I think it's just we can't do them all at the same time.
I have a quick question. Is mental health inclusive of guidance as well, or is it just social work and psych?
Social work and psych.
I define mental health as social workers and school psychologists.
Can the
Or our
question,
consulting clinician, I think is the other, sorry. Karen's
sorry.
other.
am I able to ask my questions?
Yes.
Thanks. So my questions had to do with some of the definitions on page 2, dating partner, and dating violence. I just wanted to make sure again that we're not excluding. So we give a few definitions at the end of dating. So dating any romantic relationship between unmarried couples, yada, yada, yada. Could we, I almost want to say, dating includes, but does not, includes, but what's the wording I'm looking for? Basically, does not exclude anything, does not limit
It's not
anything.
limited to.
Yeah, because I want to make sure that, we're not looking at this and saying, well, we weren't doing any of these things, but,
Do you think that is defined when it talks about dating partner, any person regardless of, it says involved in a relationship, any former dating or sexual relationship or same-sex sex couple, or are unrelated but have had intimate or continuous social contact with one another? Do you think that clarifies it more, or?
I do. I actually wanted to, I was glad to see the former piece in there as well, because I
Okay.
really think that's, and I actually was, when I was first reading this, I was going through and saying, do we say former in dating as well? Because, it just concerns me because a lot of times with domestic violence, you see it with the former.
Right. But I think the intention of the definition is just all those different, any one of those can be considered. It's not
Okay.
one over the other. All of those could be considered as being an abusive relationship or potential violence.
Okay.
I'm just looking, that's a good.
I'm
that's a
trying to
good
remember my
question. And
wording.
I'm looking for the may, and I can't find the may to save my life.
I have found the may.
Oh,
And
Oh, excellent.
Oh,
and just, sorry, just one point to what Carrie Feather had just said. I see what you're saying, Carrie, and it probably points to what I had asked earlier with Katie. We don't want to limit too much, and it does
Right.
cover it in that first sentence. So I agree with you
Right.
and on what was being said. So
thanks. Yeah, it's so yeah, I had to try to remember the phrase that, that I was thinking of. I haven't had dinner yet, so my brain is includes but not limited to, I think is
Right.
what I was thinking of. If we were going to give examples, if we don't give examples, I think that Well, no, sorry, Katie.
I mean, you can finish your thought. I just,
Oh, no, I figured
yeah. So my fear with language like that is that you're now creating an overbroad policy that this is really a pinpointed policy towards teen dating violence, related towards, I apologize for the chaos behind me, towards those relationships and the violence that could occur during that. So if there's no relationship, if it's an unrequited type of situation, you know, that's a whole different matter.
But it's still, yeah, I agree with that, but it's still, that could be something.
That would be if there's no relationship and there's no dating, or
That would be a straight up criminal.
That's straight up harassment, or?
That would be straight up harassment, sexual harassment,
Okay,
bullying.
that would be
type.
covered by that policy.
Yeah.
Okay,
Right.
Yeah.
thank you.
Matter of fact, I just have a quick question. Jay, when do you think you'd be ready to have the bullying conversation?
So we're ready to have it now. I was going to let you know we're ready for the next meeting.
Oh,
to
really?
put it on. Yeah, it's mostly around the areas of intervention. So
Okay.
once the investigation has taken place, we've identified the perpetrator, we developed safety plans, but then there's the intervention for the student who was the aggressor. The school counselors right now are obligated to provide a program. We've never been able to identify a program since we put this policy in place.
Yeah.
But they also want to add pieces like what we do already for tier 1 and tier 2 and tier 3. So they want to provide more of the universal look rather than just the act and the result.
I'm sorry, has the mental health team looked at this as well?
They're the ones who actually brought it to me. So,
Okay.
because they knew that we wrote it together before. So they really have been chomping at it for the last 6 months to get it before you. So
Then we can put that on the next agenda.
sure.
And what I would suggest then is that we table this policy for tonight so that if there's going to be any overlap, which I'm sure there will be, we can make changes. And then what we'll do is we'll have a meeting. We can make changes to this policy within 2 weeks to kind of jive with the bullying policy also. And we can pass them both at the same time.
I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, I don't like having to, I mean, I'm always up for changing and fixing policies as we need to, but when we're this close to doing something, it just seems counterproductive. So. All right, okay. Do we have any other questions?
So I found what I was looking for. It's on page 4 under reporting responsibilities.
Yes.
And it's the last sentence that discusses anyone who has information on these actions, if the actions have occurred, may file a report. And shouldn't we state must file a report? That was the only area that I was confused on. And again, I'm very new to the policy, so I appreciate all of you taking the time to really help me through.
I like questions.
This is what we need, because when you get involved in writing these things, your head gets kind of stuck in them, you know?
And
Okay,
you know what?
can you tell me where that is again? I'm not seeing it.
It's on page 4 under reporting responsibilities. It's the last sentence.
Reporting responsibilities.
It's right where the big D for draft is.
May file a report. Yep. Oh, yeah. It's a good way to describe it.
2, 3.
And you know, Carrie, we used to have most of the policies that were done years ago had a lot of may language in it.
Oh, okay.
And
So you want me to
change. We've had to make a concerted effort to change a lot of that to shall.
Yeah.
Well,
I have
it's
a question.
Yeah.
Do you want me to change that to shall or may? Must, I mean.
I don't care about words. I mean, must, shall doesn't mean the same thing.
I think
Let's
must.
say must.
Shall is more like legal.
I'd say
I
must.
like shall.
You want shall? Okay.
Sure.
Must, shall.
I'm actually with
Must sounds
Katie
more
on this.
forceful.
Yeah. Ms.
All right, I
Parker?
changed it to shall.
I was just wondering what report that is. Like, is that a report with the school, or
Yeah.
is that the already law in the state that it must be reported to DCYF?
Yeah, we're required to report to DCYF, and then DCYF made additional requirements if it happens to be staff members.
Yes.
And not only do we have to report, we also has to be reported to make sure the superintendent is aware. And there is a reporting form for that. And I actually think we linked it into this form, into this policy. Sorry,
Okay.
there is.
You know,
And
one thing
then-
I did not really pour through this policy over was pronouns. It doesn't
Yeah.
look like there are any pronouns. Is that correct? I'm trusting that. Parker,
I
kept an eye
think that was looked at, but we can double check. Since we're not passing tonight, I
Yeah.
can go back through and I'll read through it again. The thing is, when you start reading it and reading it and reading it over and over, you get,
yeah,
that's
and
why
if
it's
you-
really important, Carries with an S, that you ask those questions, because we will miss things like that, because you don't read it, you just kind of,
Yeah, there are
Yeah,
a couple
you-
of his or hers, but there are also a couple of theirs. So, I mean, if we wanted to just go
We
with
like
there,
theirs.
I think,
there, yeah.
and everything.
Yep.
I'm a
I'll
big
go
fan.
back through and look at that
Yeah,
Yeah.
similar.
this week.
Yeah, and if you guys find anything, you can always just email Rachel.
Yeah.
Just do me a favor and just copy me on it.
Thank you.
So that means that we're taking out his or her in all policy and putting in just there? Is that what has been
Across the
done?
board. Yeah, that's what we're going to
Okay.
do. As we work on all these policies, we're going to basically make them very gender neutral.
So then we need to go back to our policy that we just approved, because it was his or her designee instead of their designee then? Does that fit as well?
Oh, you're a troublemaker.
No, I'll go back. I could go back through and change any his's and herses. I don't think there's many. There is one where you just said his or
Two
her
or three.
designee,
Really? Did we just do that? And
their designee.
God, what is wrong with my brain?
And then there's his or her scope of practice. Yep, I'm doing a
Oh.
fine ball in there. Good catch, Carrie.
What I'm going to do is program it to search for it and replace.
Yeah.
Yeah, find and replace.
Find and replace.
Yeah, it's right there, and I didn't
It'll
catch
be
it. Good catch,
easier
Karen.
that way, because I don't know if we'll catch them all.
So Mark, I take this that it's not something that we need to vote on. It's something that has occurred in the past and was agreed on or voted on already, that we'd be changing the pronouns. So it's
We'll
not.
just add
something
that under the
to
vote of the
redress.
amended
Correct.
version of the draft. If
Right.
that's okay.
Yeah.
I'm sure Katie's having a small connection fit now, but
And Mark, if I could just ask one final question, and this is just,
you can ask as many questions as you want.
I'm telling you, I'm going to be done for the evening with it now. This policy and other policies related to this that have interaction with the police.
Yeah.
Do the police review these policies as well to make sure that we align and they understand what we're writing? And I just look at it as sometimes they have a perspective because they've been involved with these victims that maybe we wouldn't see, or maybe we haven't experienced.
It's a good question.
They still don't have the right, though, to come onto school property and demand to interview a student who's underage without calling their parent. And that's exactly what happened. And our staff were laying out the red carpet for them.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I absolutely agree with you, Dr. Santa. That should never happen. I just wasn't sure if we should have them do a look over on policies to make sure there's an alignment, or if we even involve them at all.
Carrie, you're on the school safety committee now, right?
Oh, thanks. Yes, I am.
Yeah, this might be a good topic to bring up at that point, because
Here
it'll
we go,
bring
Jay.
all
I'd
the
be really cautious that we have them look them over. I would say more that they review our
Notification.
policy. These are our policies. They review them, not they look them over, because that sounds more like they have to approve them. And that was concerning. I was concerned when that situation happened on both cases, because if there's any information that police officer got from that underage person, they wouldn't have been able to use the information.
right.
Do you know? So there was issues across the board in that. There was and it wasn't the only time, and that's when it started becoming alarming. So I don't think it's very helpful to have the police review our policy so that they're aware that if they're not getting the red carpet, pulled out for them, it's because we're honoring the child, and that's our ultimate job.
I absolutely agree with
That
that
makes
as
sense,
well.
yeah.
Yes, and
Yeah.
I do not, under any circumstance, think that the police should be interfering in the policies in any way. But yes, as you said, a review, just because they may have something to offer to say, we've seen a situation that maybe we're not covering, or maybe we haven't looked at. But again, I just wasn't sure what the
Yeah.
procedures were and how we worked with other local town.
With I used to somewhat regularly actually sit down with the chief and also at the time Captain Fay and just kind of discuss certain things and go over some stuff. But I haven't done that in a while. So, but we've always had a pretty good working relationship with them, and I would want to make sure that the SROs especially are aware of what our policies are. So, we'll have to,
I can give the chief a call if you'd like to see how he'd like to handle it. I think
Yeah.
in the past, he's always said the school department has to do their job and we'll be there to support whatever you need to be done. So they've always been deferential in general as a police department to our work. Actually, the police department has done a great job of sending their SROs to SRO school essentially. And a lot of these discussions actually come up and they're actually told to defer the school department and only talk to students when their families are involved. I don't see an issue with it, but
Yeah.
I can absolutely give the chief a call tomorrow.
yeah. And as a matter of fact, Ms. Smith, Katie Duncanson is going to be working on a interrogation policy because we don't have one. So she's going to do that in her spare time.
It's the
Thank you,
same
Katie.
issue. You can't be interrogated on school property like that, yeah.
Mr. Mitchell.
I'm sure everyone knows this, but I think it's important to reinforce this really important point, and that is, and you just essentially said this, I think either you or Jay, but school administrators have more authority in school than the police do. And for example, the SROs or any police that need to come to the school for any reason are well aware of that. So, the administrators only need a reasonable suspicion to, for lack of a better term, interrogate or question.
You're very hard to hear, Bum.
Yeah, you're fading in and out.
Oh, I don't know why that is. Anyway, school officials just need a reasonable suspicion to question a student, and there's a higher standard that has to be met by the police. So, and the good news is, as Jay said, the good news is the SROs are well trained, and fortunately, we have a chief that is very, very cooperative. So it's important that we don't get into trouble with those things, especially when it comes to interrogating a child, a student, over a pretty serious matter. So I just wanted everyone to know, especially the new committee members, if they did not know, that the school administration has more authority in school than a police officer does, and they're well aware of that.
Yeah. All right. Any other questions or comments? Nothing? Nobody? Hey, I have a question for Mike Chandler since he's on this call. Mike, are there any, or is there anything in Aspen that needs to be done for anything regarding any of what we've talked about, whether it's immunizations or any of the reporting? I mean, is there a computer record of anything?
Nurses input all that information into Aspen in the immunization sheets. So we
Okay.
have a record of that already in the
And then
system.
I'm assuming also that when there's like safety plans for victims or anything like that, there's also notations in Aspen or whatever.
Some things are documented in there, and some things they have the ability to keep private, so that's not in the system, but yes.
Okay. Just, it occurred to me. No one
If
else?
there's Mark, if there's a plan that everyone needs to follow, then it does get uploaded.
Okay.
So there are some kids that have safety plans or like a behavior intervention plan regarding not being in the same vicinity as another child or things like that. They're not very many, but when those happen, they are uploaded.
Okay.
Yeah, I was thinking more of some of this like social, personal
Yeah,
stuff.
oh, no, not that, yeah. We don't have their notes.
All right. If there's nothing else, then I would just ask for a motion to table.
Motion to table.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right, so that's tabled, and those other changes will be made, and we'll really go through everything else. Next up is the consideration of policies to create or review for future agendas. I do have one that I want to mention. I just wanted, I feel like we haven't done a review of any of the fiscal policies lately. So I think that's going to be bye. Bye, Lisa. So I'd like to be able to do some of that. And since Ms. Smith is also on fiscal, I think this would be a great thing for you to take a look at, maybe because Alex will have to be a part of a lot of this, of course, because we've talked about doing some changes to the fund balance policy. Just as a result of like the healthcare funding being different and wanting to set up an account for technology so that, because we've talked, Mike, how long we've been talking about a technology fund balance account since we started going one-to-one, right?
Yeah, probably about 8 years, 9 years.
Yeah.
This is actually a little bit before that.
Okay. So I've been talking about this for 8 years. Mike's been talking about it for longer. So it'd be great to get it done. So, and Carrie, you and I can talk about this at some point anyways, and kind of go over stuff. Also, if you can, there's some policies throughout the policy manual. I'm getting some feedback or something from someone. There are some policies that need to be moved into fiscal management. So maybe you can take a look and just see if there's anything that should be done. So, anybody have any other policies that need to be addressed? I know Jay will do bullying on the next agenda. Carrie?
Yeah, just wanted to let you know that I've started to do some preliminary research on communications policies.
Oh, good.
So I've got a spreadsheet of different towns and some links to what they are doing in Rhode Island and Mass. It's not comprehensive yet, but I've got maybe 16 or so on there.
Yeah. Did I tell you that Cambridge is a good one to always look at?
It was so funny because I was trying to remember the one that you had mentioned, and I was looking at Ashland, Natick, not Foxborough, Franklin. So thank you, Cambridge.
Yeah, no, Cambridge. I don't know who writes their policies, but their policy, some of them are like textbooks, the length of them, but they do have a policy on everything.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Mr. Mitchell, anything for policy in the future?
Not that I can think of at this time.
Okay, I know we're going to start to slow down because budget season is coming up.
Well, we're in it.
Yeah,
Oh,
but
no.
yeah, what happens is for the two carries is that once budget meetings start happening at night, the subcommittee meetings have a tendency of dropping off, especially policy, because the people that are crafting policy are also doing all the other stuff. So there's just not enough time in a day. So, so if no one has anything else, I would ask for, public comment. If is anybody from the public here?
You have somebody from the public. If they'd
Jen
like to-
Clark is here. For those that don't know, Jen Clark is the one of the chair people of the Special Education Advisory Committee. So, so if no one has any public comment, then I would say a motion for adjournment would be in order.
Motion to adjourn.
I'll second the motion.
By Mrs. Feather, second by Ms. Smith. All in favor?
Aye.
We stand adjourned at 6:20.
Thank you.
Always like my
Thank
meetings
you.
to end on time.
Very nice.
Thank
Yeah.
you
Take
very
care.
much.
Thank you, everyone.